Joe Biden made some pretty big comments the other day. I'll share them here with you guys. So in Politico, they say, Biden warns of nuclear Armageddon. Damn. Those are definitely strong words, if you ask me. So they say, last night at a fundraiser in New York City, President Joe Biden issued a stark warning about the risks of nuclear war in Ukraine. Quote, first time since the Cuban Missile Crisis, we have a direct threat of the use of a nuclear weapon if in fact things continue down the path they are going, Biden told donors at the home of investor James Murdoch. I'm trying to figure out, what is Russian President Vladimir Putin's off-ramp? Where does he find a way out? Where does he find himself in a position that he does not only lose face, but lose significant power within Russia? So I'm going to get to the reaction on this in a second, but look, it's a good point, right? Like, there's a massive paradox here. There's a massive catch-22 here, which is, in order to provide an off-ramp, you need negotiation and diplomacy, and you need some sort of an agreement, some sort of a deal. But then, if you do some sort of a deal, and you make any of a number of concessions, even if they're minor concessions to Vladimir Putin, then of course, the concern is, well, you just set the precedent that any large country can invade any smaller, weaker country and then start demanding stuff, and then they can get new pieces of territory, right? And so it's sort of like a moral conundrum. There are no good answers. There is no, like, hey, just do this and then we're all set. Because either way, you're setting a bad precedent. I mean, you absolutely can have a situation where, let's say, Ukraine effectively defends all of their territory in perpetuity, but in a situation like that, you're going to have a prolonged, bloody, deadly battle where many civilians die, many soldiers die, and then you are rolling the dice and running the risk of a madman who has nuclear weapons getting antsy and feeling like he's backed in a corner and saying, fuck it, I got nothing to lose, and pressing that red button. So, like, there are no easy ways out here. And, I mean, Biden's comments are completely unobjectionable if you ask me. I mean, look, again, quote, I'm trying to figure out, what is Russian President Vladimir Putin's off-ramp? Where does he find a way out? Where does he find himself in a position that he does not only not lose face, but lose significant power within Russia? So, I mean, look, all I would say to Biden is, if that is your feeling on it, then you can apply pressure to the Ukrainians to get to the negotiation table. You can do that. Now, that doesn't guarantee anything, because Putin would have to also be a partner in peace where he says, okay, I'm ready to just have a discussion now, and I'm ready to have a conversation about what we're going to do moving forward. And there's no guarantee he would do that either, even if you sit down at the table and you have a negotiation, right? So, and there's no doubt that people would start screaming that Biden's like Neville Chamberlain and he's an appeaser if he were to do that, and people would be saying, you know, you can't make peace with somebody who's effectively like Hitler because it's just going to embolden him, et cetera, et cetera. But if that is how Joe Biden really feels, that like, look, we need to find an off-ramp here, we need to find a way for him to save face, well, then that is what you'd be doing, that is what you'd be calling for. And in terms of his actions that we can view as outsiders, it looks like that's not necessarily the path he's going down. Look, I have no doubt, I think if like Kamala Harris was president or somebody else was president, other than Bernie, of course, I think they would have been more hawkish. I think we'd be in a much worse situation right now. You know, Biden has been hawkish in the sense that he's sending a lot of, you know, money and weapons to Ukraine and doing it over and over. But compared to how like Mayor Pete would have acted or Kamala Harris would have acted, I think they would have just listened to the generals, and the generals at this point probably would have been like, let's fast track Ukraine into NATO and let's get the boots on the ground and let's like rah World War III. So, but it doesn't look like this really is his position, because if it was, maybe we'd hear more stories about like Biden prodding Zelensky to sit at the table and prodding Putin to sit at the table for negotiation. But, you know, you don't hear much about that. All you hear is package number 15 or whatever going to fund Ukraine and give them more weapons. Biden made a detour into domestic politics, but then returned to the subject that was clearly weighing on him. Quote, we have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis, Biden said. Putin is not joking when he talks about the potential use of tactical nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons, because his military is, you might say, significantly underperforming. I don't think there's any such thing as the ability to easily use a tactical nuclear weapon and not end up with Armageddon. Wow. So, look, he's sounding the alarm and he understands the gravity of the situation, but what's wild to me is that I was watching some mainstream media over the weekend, and there's a lot of like attacking Biden over this comment and saying, oh, this will make our European allies' legs go wobbly. That was a quote I literally heard. I think it was on Jake Tapper's show. It'll make our European allies' legs go wobbly if they think Putin means it. And so Biden shouldn't say something like this because you don't want to weaken the resolve of the pro-Ukrainian side. And it's like, but if he really believes we're on the brink of nuclear annihilation, and it sounds like he does, then isn't that the proper reaction? Isn't that shouldn't your legs go wobbly? Shouldn't you want to say, hey, let's find an off-ramp here. This is getting a little out of hand. And so it's all about optics in mainstream media, where the optics here are like weakness because you think he's not bluffing. Okay, yeah, but what if he's not bluffing, right? Like, we need to entertain that possibility and that reality. And in my opinion, it's clear he means it because, remember, at the beginning of the war, everybody, including myself, thought, oh, maybe he'll invade the eastern portion of the country. Like, that's what he's going to do. I was never on team, like, he's not going to invade. I saw the buildup of the troops on the border. So, why would you do that? Probably because you're going to invade. But I thought it would just be the eastern portion of the country. Everybody was like, there's no way he's going to, invade the western portion of the country. He's not insane. And then he invaded the western portion of the country, too. And so, clearly he wasn't bluffing then. It was not a bluff. So, maybe you should take him at his word now. I mean, the idea that we're at a place where, a major power leader can say, I might use nuclear weapons. And then, our intelligence analysts are like, I don't believe him. Isn't that enough to take the concern very, very seriously? Clearly, our president is. Why wouldn't our intelligence agencies? Why wouldn't, Jake Tapper and all these D-bags who are talking on mainstream media and yapping, acting like, it's nothing but a bluff, bro. It does feel like, sleepwalking into some World War III type conflict. And it's a terrifying thing. So they continue here and they say, some context from New York Times, Katie Rogers and David Sanger. Mr. Biden's references to Armageddon were highly unusual for any American president since the Cuban Missile Crisis 60 years ago this month. Occupants of the Oval Office have rarely spoken in such grim tones about the possible use of nuclear weapons, much less talked openly about off-ramps. Okay, and then they go on to talk about something else here. Anyway, it's crazy to me that Biden is getting any crap for stating what is effectively the obvious to me. All I would say to Biden is, if you truly believe this, then your action should coincide with your concerns. And so, but look, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe everything hasn't been reported. Maybe Biden has been talking to Putin and talking to Zelensky and talking to our European allies and saying stuff like, look, I don't like it. It's not a good situation, but we have to get to the negotiation table because if we don't, the alternatives are way worse. Because indeed they are way worse. And it is absolutely possible that you get to the negotiation table, you make a deal, you draw it up, you implement it, and then, within 5 years, Putin's invading another place. In which case, everybody would say, well, that was stupid. You should have never tried to make peace with them in the first place. But you have to try. You have to give peace a chance. And if you don't, and if that doesn't work, well, then we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But the options in that scenario are, the world has never seen them before. To not only have somebody who's unappeasable, but also armed in a nuclear sense, I'm not sure exactly what the world can do with that. I'm not sure what the real possibilities on the menu are. So, but either way, it's getting ugly, man. And yet again, Putin has shown that he's not bluffing because he just launched 75 missiles across all of Ukraine. Including launching them in playgrounds and at civilian territory. And so, it is scary to watch. It's absolutely scary to watch. And I don't think any of us would be surprised at this point if you get the alert and it says, nukes are in the air. We got to get away from this. I don't know how else I can say it. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.